Okay, we're live. How's everyone doing? It took us quite a while to get everything set up. Had some technical difficulties. I was trying. We had this planned out for a long time, but we tried to set things up kind of last minute. Learning through YouTube, you have to give them like 24 hours before you start streaming. So ran into that, but yeah. Welcome to the first episode. Frank, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I go by FLW, sometimes FLW, the teacher. And I want to thank you, Andre, because, we had done some things in the past. And, you know, one of the things that I really appreciated about you was the fact that at the community meetings that we were having, and, I use that word community loosely because our goal is to recreate community. I don't
Right.
know that we really are achieving that to the best of our ability. I've said this before. There've been and and in part I'm guilty of it, what I'm about to say. So a lot of us live in areas and we don't know our neighbor. We don't know our neighbor's name. We don't know who lives in our neighbor's place. And we've not even we haven't even spoken to that person before. That doesn't sound like community at all. And so part of how you and I met was this whole idea of being a part of recreating community. And we had several meetings in the area of East Atlanta. And one of the things that impressed me, I'm Gen X. I'm gonna go ahead and put myself out there, but it's no secret. I mean, you see this
Yeah,
stuff here.
we're trying to bridge the generation. So
That's right, and that's what it's
millennials
about.
out
So
here.
Gen Z, Gen X, and so we had done some things in the past, and I remember being impressed by the fact that you kept showing up at those meetings, and we did some stuff after that. And actually, this platform that we're on right now is because of you reaching out and saying, "Hey, I think we should continue. I think we need to continue what we had started." You were one of the people that I had reached out to, and we were doing some other stuff with young men and reaching out across the generation. So I credit you for what we're starting today. And the topic, interesting enough, is consistency. So I guess I wanted to start by asking you a question
Sure.
because I know that and I'm sure you know that your generation takes a lot of hits when it comes to that whole question of consistency. For an example, one of the things I know you hear all the time is that, oh, millennials, Gen Zers, they'll bang out on a job in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've heard that.
Hmm.
And maybe now I've been hearing two sides of it. I've learned from a Gen Zer I know that my generation and definitely the boomers, we probably have stuck in too long. We were too loyal. Okay,
Yeah.
so so I'm going to stop
Yeah.
and let
Little
you
dichotomy.
address this idea of consistency from your perspective and what drives you. I see you as a consistent person. What drives you?
Okay. What drives me for consistency? I think it just for me it's something that works. So I kind of live by the mentality like when I wake up, I gotta do everything that's on my plate, and my goal is to make it back to bed. Like so and I look at that every day. So I wake up with knowing what I have to do for that day, and my main goal is just making it back back to my bed so I can start the day over again. And we continuously do that. It's a simple goal, but it helps me remain consistent and just knock out the things that I have to do. Coming to the aid to the defense of my generation when it does come to consistency. I think we have consistently seen that a lot of things don't work when you're I don't want to say when you're consistent, but the more work that you put in doesn't necessarily lead to more results. So you can kind of, I think we kind of put a cap on how long we're going to be consistent with something if we're not seeing any type of results. So when it comes to jobs, I mean, I can't really blame a lot of people because we're seeing what these jobs really are at this stage. Like, we've been in the workforce now, I guess, like growing up, I'm just speaking from my perspective, but growing up you're hearing about just the slavery times in school and difficulties for black people getting jobs. And so now we're at a point where we do have jobs, we do have these opportunities, but we're kind of, now we don't feel like we're being properly compensated in some of these areas and for the type of work that we're doing. So I'm not personally a job hopper or someone who quits a job. I've been laid off a couple of times, but in terms of consistency, yeah, you can't. Times is getting heavy. Like the amount of money that these jobs are paying really doesn't afford them the consistency that they're kind of looking for. I think in a lot of these cases, which doesn't really and that's not to let off my generation off the hook, because at the end of the day, we need to be. Maybe it's not consistent for a company, but you need to be consistent in your own personal business, and I think that's where a lot of the work has to come in. But we don't really see that because we're the only type of experience that we've had has just been the base level working jobs for the most part. So we haven't even, and when you're at those base level positions, you don't even really get a chance to feel like you're being fulfilled. So there's nothing really keeping you there to make you want to be consistent. If you're just doing mind numbing work and consistently just putting, doing stamping papers or sending out the same email. So if there's no variety in the job, then you're not going to get people to continue to show up. So I do think my generation has to step up and is creating more businesses for us to practice our consistency. This past week, I've been thinking just like the lack of, I wouldn't even say entrepreneurs, but just even the lack of people who have basic businesses in our community kind of stunts the growth of the community as a whole because there's no businesses to provide services to. There's no there's no inspiration for, or there's nobody to hire younger people into a business. Like when I was a kid, I was working with one of my friend's fathers owned what was it called? It was like one of the drive-in convenience stores. It was like a dairy barn, something like that. You just drive in and kind of get like convenient, like chips and stuff like that. I mean, I wasn't working there consistently, but I mean, his father took me there maybe once or twice, and I got to see what it was like to, work at an early age. I was probably like 7, 8 or something. So, but that stuck with me for a long time. And seeing somebody own a business was amazing to me. So I knew that it was possible. And I don't think a lot of people do get that opportunity at a young age to kind of see a business being ran. So yeah, just to kind of wrap it up, consistency as an employee doesn't, that's where you're not going to find a consistent employee in anybody in my generation right now. You'll find some people who are consistently dedicated to their dream or their overall goal, but yeah, when it comes to working for somebody else, my generation is like not feeling it. So
Now I know that with you being in the tech field, I wonder if there has been the opportunity foreshadowing and mentorship and so forth, because I think for a lot of people, and I remember that this was sort of a challenge when I was in my 20s to a degree, although I was fortunate being an educator, being a classroom teacher, that I did have people that were able to model the things that I was looking for. But when I went into business, um, in certain respects, it was different. Now I have to admit, now that I think about it, I never really thought about this until now.
Hmm.
In so many respects, when it came to my career or business, I was fortunate to position myself for mentorship,
Hmm.
because when I got into the business arena, I had people who were mentoring me. And then even when I was in the school system, I had people who were mentoring me. And I think that maybe for some of the people who are in their 20s and 30s who may be struggling in the workplace,
Hmm.
I wonder if they're getting that mentorship, whether doors are being provided for them to get that mentorship. So I'm gonna let you speak to that.
Hmm. Oh yeah, so I was definitely looking for mentorship when I first graduated. Really in school, I was looking for mentorship, and that was like a constant search. I probably wasn't looking in the right places at that time, but I mean, I was looking, and no one kind of. It might just have been no one was connecting with me because I guess at Georgia State, um, they did have different programs, and I would go to. I was always trying to put myself in positions to find the people who were doing the same things that I was doing. None of it just kind of led to me having a real mentor or someone who I trusted enough to kind of go to with issues and things. So, like, I would go to hackathons. I would go to after school stuff, extra credit things, or study sessions, just to try and meet other people who are doing the same thing I was. Um, and in school, definitely no, I didn't find any mentors. Once I graduated, it got even harder to find places, professional spaces, in order to find a mentor, especially a black mentor for myself. Um, I had gone to, that's when I had enrolled in the boot camp General Assembly up in Midtown Atlanta, and still didn't really find. I had instructors there, like people who were teaching the class, and they were developers, and seeing that did help, but they weren't like my personal mentors. And everybody in that course really probably, they were new to the field as well. Like, so, they're kind of coming up more as my peers instead of mentors. Um, yeah, getting onto my first job, that was really like I got thrown to the wolves basically. I did have someone who was supposed to be mentoring me, but I do personally feel like he was maybe a little intimidated by me. Maybe he hadn't like really spoken to black people before. Um, and I was like, I mean, at that point, I think I might have just started growing my hair, so I definitely had the beard already. Um, People like the company. It was up in Sandy Springs. I got put onto that company by my old roommate Chris, who was he was working there as a UI designer. So I got a referral from him, which is the best way to get a position at any time. Um,
Yes,
and so shout out to him for, doing what he was supposed to be doing, which, helped me. I always tell him that, like, because you was doing what you needed to do, what I mean? You helped me. And so I
that's
always
right.
try to be in that same, if I can help somebody, then I always will try to extend my hand for them. But yeah. The mentors, the first person who was like assigned to be my mentor, didn't really, he really wouldn't reach out to me. Tried to have conversations with him. He wasn't necessarily comfortable. He was a cool guy. I just don't think he was. I don't feel like he was necessarily a teacher, or he was someone who probably just kind of knew how to code really, but was never in the position to like teach somebody. So that didn't really help me. I had other people like, because I was struggling at my first position. So, I mean, I had people, come try and reach out and help me. But there was one guy, it was another Chris at the company. He was a white guy, little older than me, and he was like leading my team. So he had gave me a lot of good direction. Um, but then once I left the company, I kind of lost contact with him as well. So he did put me in. He put me in contact with somebody at Georgia Tech who I reached out to. Nothing really came from it, but it was a start. But yeah, as far as like a mentor who I could like consistently reach out to, never really had. The last position I did have, the architect, he was a black guy. I think I want to say he might have been from like the UK. I forgot exactly what part, but he was real cool. Like he knew a lot. He had like a side business. He ended up leaving the company, and we continued to stay in touch. I worked on a few projects with him, but still not really a mentor.
So let me ask you this, because I don't even want to drill down on the idea that in 2020 to 2018, whenever it was that that first position came about, the 21st century, that there would be a professional who had never communicated with Black people. And
Mhm,
so the fact that we are still in that kind of space
mhm,
legitimizes why DEI is necessary. I happen to be listening to one of my mentors,
mhm,
Reverend Al Sharpton, and he was saying that there's this move to dismantle DEI.
mhm,
Now, there are companies that clearly need DEI because there are folks from middle America, the top of America, who, outside of turning on the television or going to a Timberwolves game, they may not come in contact with Black folks. And so
mhm,
the kind of Black folks that they come in contact with can jump through the gym. And so these are people, superhero Black folks
mhm,
that you go to see in a concert, but regular Black folks, I don't know how to talk to you. I know how to applaud superhuman Black folks,
mhm,
but a normal person that works as an educator or a construction worker, what do I do? You know,
mhm.
you must be one of those people that creeped over the border. So,
Yeah.
so, so this is a challenge, but I digress a little bit, as you know, I'm capable of. So, I want to ask you though, for the sake of those people who are just starting their careers, who will watch this, and
Mhm,
I thank you for your candor, because one of the main reasons why we're doing this is to to in a to in some ways hopefully provide some type of a blueprint for the alphas that are coming along, the Gen Zers, and the people that I know that you have a passion for helping, and it's, if not today, on some other Zoom, we'll probably talk about some of the other work that you've done in the
mhm,
past and are still doing to impact the generation coming behind you. My question is, what suggestions, given your own personal experience, and now hindsight is 2020, what suggestions might you give to someone in their 20s who's just entering the workforce, how should they go about cultivating mentorship? Because sometimes, where we get stuck is that we get stuck with this guy, this
Mhm.
person that's assigned to us. And very rarely, from what I've known, as a coach and all the stuff that I've read,
Mhm.
it's often the case that the person that you get matched with is just somebody.
Mhm.
But then, usually, from what I've gleaned, the person that really is your mentor is somebody different. But I'm going to stop because I want to give you a chance to answer it. I don't want to answer. I'm about to answer the question myself.
Yeah, so to me, you have to actively be engaging in whatever career that you are pursuing. So it's not enough to go to work. If you're looking for a mentor, you have to go above and beyond in order to position yourself in a place to where the person who might connect with you would be able to connect with you. And so um, but one thing I will say, because I actually met with yesterday when you had called me, I was at lunch with the lead the one of the guys who was organizing this Black Tech conference. I don't want to mess up the name. Let me try. It's like NBSE conference. Let me see if this is it. NSBE 50th. Yeah. It was called the NSBE conference. It was happening at the Georgia Congress Center today. Um, but yeah, so my friend Sensei, she went to Mississippi State, and her mentor. So she actually had a mentor, which was very funny. He actually gave me a quote for today's thing in terms of consistency. I'll say later, but yeah. So just she was kind of in, I think she was in like a technical field when she was going to school. But he was the guy who I met yesterday. He put together, or was one of the people who helped put together this conference of for Black people to, it's called National Society of Black Engineers. So that's what
Okay.
the NSBE stands for.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and they have a whole bunch of different companies who are looking for people. So that would definitely be a place. Had I known about it earlier, I probably would have signed up. um I had gone to a conference last year. I think I told you, Black Men in Tech.
Yeah.
um
I remember that.
that was cool. It seemed like a branch of Afrotech. But what I'm starting to notice is in our spaces right now, I guess it's a lot geared towards like cybersecurity and government
Oh, yeah.
technology.
Oh, yeah.
So those are, but it's a little, to me, it's a little buzzwordy at this point. So like when I went there weren't too many. I think it was a lot of people who are trying to get into the field. So I still think we're lacking in the amount of people who have like a good amount of experience in the field at this point. Um, so it was definitely a majority of people looking to get into the field as opposed to people already in the field. Um, it's I like the concept of it, but I do think it has a long way to go before it's at the point where it's putting people on jobs. Like, I mean, they did have like a little career fair, some people set up there, but nothing really too. It didn't feel legitimate for some reason, and I mean, I had a great time there, but that was some of my feedback for it. I think it was a little bit too focused on the guest speakers. So they had a lot of celebrities come and talk about different somehow they got into the tech field, some people about finances, stuff like that. So but it's a lot of people with followings, like YouTube followings or Instagram followings. So I don't have really an Instagram like that. So some people are big on Instagram and I don't know. Um, but to me, that's not really, if you're just big on Instagram, then I don't really, I'm not saying I can't learn anything from you, but that's not where I'm. I don't really find stuff through Instagram. Like I think even when it comes to music, I notice a lot of people might judge the artist by their Instagram before they listen to the music. I'm someone, I go to the work first and then, find out about your social media. So yeah, when it comes to mentorship, because I was hoping, I was going there in search of, a mentor, and I just didn't really feel, I didn't feel anybody there was, I didn't have like a conversation with anybody there where it was like, oh, okay, we need to, we need to work together. So,
So I want to go back to something you said earlier, and it's a very important point because um, one of the things, and speaking of mentors, one of the things that my mentor taught me many years ago is that amateurs just go off the dome. Now, no slight to Jay Z. Now you have some people who just are gifted to do that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people
mhm,
who just um, they don't have a plan. They show
mhm,
up and just do stuff, and that usually doesn't work. So I actually have notes here. So I'm
mhm,
going to look back at my notes, and there's something that I wrote down here. It says executives look for people who consistently outperform their peers.
mhm,
So you said something earlier when you said if you want to be in the position to get the mentor that you're looking for, part of getting there, because you're in a very nuanced field that we're starting to see more blacks in tech.
mhm,
And by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person has to be black in order to be a mentor,
mhm,
because going back to this whole DEI thing and being sensitive and so on, you know, that perfect mentor might be polka dot, so
mhm,
we're not tripping on that. I think that when you made the statement of doing the work, sometimes what happens, and I saw this in my generation, you'd have people, it was clear they were going to work because they had to.
mhm,
It was where they got a paycheck. It was where the paycheck would cover their rent or their mortgage or their car payment. I know some people who are fortunate to not have a house note or rent, who are, you know, amongst the 20 somethings, and they take almost their whole paycheck to cover their whip,
mhm.
because by the time you pay the note and pay the insurance and put gas in it, the whole check is going. And
Yeah.
so what I'm saying is that, and as somebody who has had young people under my wing
Mhm,
in the workplace, I can't emphasize what you said earlier. People want to see that you can do the work, and that you, now if you're fresh out of college, you're learning to do the work.
mhm,
Okay, we get it, but you need to be applying yourself like you are serious about learning how to get the work, because it wouldn't be fair to expect you to perform like a nurse who's been on the job for 20 years and you just finished your exams and graduated from college. That wouldn't be fair.
mhm.
But you've got the energy as a 26-year-old to level up to that 52-year-old from an energy standpoint. You should be, bouncing. Oh, can I help you? Can I
Right.
can I support you on this? And that enthusiasm, that interest draws attention, because one of the things I could say I was blessed to do as an educator is, I know that in the school that I was fortunate to be at, I was in the top 10% as an educator. I mean, almost walking through the door. That's the grace of God on me, but then that's also application. That's okay. I'm not just going to let the game come to me. I'm gonna come at the game.
Hmm.
I'm coming to the game.
Yeah.
And so as in the technology field, I would imagine that it's not just what you do at work. The great thing about being in tech is that when you get to the house, you still got you got your computer,
Computer.
you got your
Hmm.
tools. So there's no excuse about getting getting into it and
Hmm.
trying to get up on the game because it's not like one of those professions where you can't get to it until you know you clock in. No.
Right.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely wanted to say that. Yeah, you're right. You gotta put the work in. You know.
Yeah. And I think kind of piggybacking on what you said, um, the work that you do have to put in as a developer, I would say that's one of the harder things about being a black developer because I think you come in, you're already. I think for me, I'm just speaking from my personal experience. I came in and I already felt like an alien to a degree. First time kind of being in a corporate set. Well, that wasn't my first time in a corporate setting, but a corporate setting of that size, I guess. And so, you're already, I'm feeling alienated that my work is just being kind of hyper focused on just being black, just kind of by, just by trade or whatever. But yeah, then once you start making mistakes, then you feel like everything is also magnified on you as well. You don't have any, and then when I mean, there was other black people at the company, but when there's no other black developers, you kind of just like you feeling all the pressure. You just like, and that was probably the biggest. It's a lot of pressure, and when you don't see anybody else like you, then you're kind of just blazing the trail forward, trying to figure out what's next, trying to figure out how to properly ask for help. Without seeming incompetent. So you're being new. You don't know. You're adjusting to corporate life. You're adjusting to working with a team. There's really no there's no baby steps into some of these fields, and I think that's like probably the biggest barrier keeping black people out of that field for the most part. Because coding isn't difficult. It does require a lot of like discipline, I would say, just to make sure that you're stuck. Because you do need to know a lot. Like you need to be familiar with what you're doing. But excuse me, if you can do your job, then you can do the job. But sometimes it'll be about how quick you can do the job. Sometimes it'll be how good of a solution you can do. So there was just a lot of things that I think having a mentor earlier on in my career could have helped me with some of my anxiety about that because it's just a different, like, I mean, you making good money, like you making money that I was making money at that job. I ain't think I was ever gonna see. I was making more than my parents instantly. So, you know, just kind of wrapping my mind about that, like not trying to lose that. So, and when I lost it, it's like you lose, you think you dropped the biggest bag, or you did drop the big bag, like and you do come back, and you can get bigger ones, of course, but you know, I'm figuring all of that out on the fly. Like nobody told, I had no one to turn to when I got laid off, and I just lost the biggest job of my career. So I had to just kind of stay down and figure out how to get back when I was already struggling to stay in. So, you're thinking like, how am I gonna prove to another company that, what I mean, I have what it take, and I got the first company through a referral. So it's like that kind of ran out my network at that point because I didn't know anybody else who was in positions like that at the time. So it's uh it's one of those things where that's where consistency did kick in because I was just looking every day for real. Like when I did get laid off, I started like one of my homegirls. She was doing, it was around because of COVID, so she was doing COVID testing, and so I had like a little, quick little gig doing that for a while. But and I was, it was paying decent. I think it was paying like 25 hour, which was still a huge pay cut from what I was making before. But just from keeping the bills paid, whatever. But at that time, I was doing that, and they liked me there. They was like, "Oh yeah, you can get extra hours." Like I'm always a good wherever I work. I'm gonna do my job. I'm gonna do it great, and people going to like, well, that's how it is most of the time. So that computer science was the only, or development was the only place that was a little different because it's not really so much how hard you work. I mean, I could sit there for it, but it's like you just need to get the answers and solve the problem the right way. So for me, but while I was at the testing COVID, I wasn't able to do any interviews, and I was like, all right, I got to make a decision. Like, am I gonna continue doing this, or am I gonna like try and go for a position that I know is gonna be able to afford the lifestyle that I want? And so, the
But
next step is taking that break. Mm.
something that I thought of listening to you, that's a mistake that a lot of people make, especially when I was in my 20s, and I would say to people in my generation, so many of us operated in silos.
Mm.
And one of the things that I'm hearing from you that I think is more common with your generation is there seems to be a greater level of communication and cooperation in terms of the hookup, as we would call it.
Mhm.
I think that there was a greater level of pride that existed, 20 years ago when something happened, you lost your job, and a person would just try to figure it out on their own. And
Mhm.
you've already given us a few examples of people that were friends of yours that you made aware of your situation and they were able to put you on.
Mhm.
But during my generation, a lot of times no one even knew that you had been put off, and
Mhm.
you would just try to figure it out on your own. So that's a good thing.
Mhm.
And I would definitely say that even as we're trying to make our way out of COVID, that there's still people who need to come out of silos and communicate, let people know what's going on, because if people don't know that you're looking, then how
Mhm.
can they look out?
Right.
So that's and then also one of the things I talk about all the time, which is a big mistake that I made and a lot of the people in my generation. Now, folks who were part of fraternities and sororities and so forth,
Mhm.
there's you see more of that connectivity
Networking.
kind of
Mhm.
automatically
Yeah.
within that arena. But
Mhm.
then people who didn't belong to that kind of culture, many of them, once they graduated, once they threw the caps up in the ground, once we threw the caps up in the air, that was
Yeah.
it. We didn't even have a phone number to that person that we hung out with for two, three,
Mhm.
4 years. It's ridiculous. And so every chance I get, I always tell people, don't go to school with people and vibe with people for 2, 3, 4 years, and you've got these brilliant people around you, and then once you graduate, you've lost track of doctors and engineers and all these people
Mhm.
that are in. First of all, even if they aren't necessarily people who you will actually work with as far as career, these are people who may be able to provide services to you, as professionals. But
Right.
we disconnect from those people. And in other cultures, we know in the amongst the Asians, the Indians, the people of the Jewish culture. They they communicate.
Hmm.
They circulate the dollar. I mean, I see the poster behind you, Black Wall Street. Well, no, I know a little bit about that. We were kind of forced to flip the dollar in that circumstance, but there's a lot of things we can do consistently as far as trying to stay connected. For an example, when you mentioned the Black Engineers Organization, one of the things I would tell people is that even while you're gainfully employed, you should be connected to a professional organization because if it's a thriving professional organization, they may be in a position to help you level up, A,
Hmm.
and B, should you end up laid off, that organization may well be the catapult into your next position. But for a lot
For
of
sure.
people, they don't belong to anything.
Hmm.
They barely are at their job, and some people spend a lot of time complaining about said job. And so, who wants to be
Hmm.
around somebody that's complaining? Your mentor? You think your mentor wants to be around that attitude?
Not at all.
No.
Yeah. See, sticking together or the networks have become stronger really due to social media. So
Mhm.
right now, I mean, we have LinkedIn, which I utilize a lot. Like, I've met a lot of people. Like, even I'm someone who, like, I would go to how we met at the community meetings. I'll go to anything that's kind of community centered, or, I mean, I'll poke my head in and see what, if I'm not doing nothing. Like, that's what I do for fun, kind of. Like, I'll just go around the city looking for different events. But so I've through a lot of different events. I went to some conference they had at the Gathering Spot in downtown Atlanta, and then from there I met a lady who was in charge of like the STEM programs at Atlanta Public School. So I got to go speak there. So just with a lot of my networking has got like, and I know a great network and that, but that's my next step is kind of utilizing my network, putting people together, and thinking of creative ways that we can all kind of interact. Because as I'm learning about this sector, then I'm like, oh well, this is kind of remnant of what you're doing, or you want to provide things for that. So, and I do, and that's one thing that I've always appreciated about going to a university is like the people who I graduated with, I see moving into different different high points in Atlanta. So, the next 10, 15 years, people will be solidified in different positions that they've been in. And the connections that we made back at school, will have things moving a lot better, lead to different collaborations. So that's one of the big things, that reasons I push for people to go to school. Like, I tell a lot of people I used to be super anti school, especially right out of graduation, because I didn't see the path forward really. And so you just kind of throw up the hat and now you just out here. So I didn't feel like and that's partially on me as well, because I didn't take advantage of all of the opportunities that were afforded to me in school. I didn't know about all of them, but that's also part. So I get that's my biggest when I'm talking to younger people. I'm just like, when you're in school, take advantage of every opportunity that you can. Like the amount, and that's where people kind of misconstrue where the value of education is at. So
That's
I'm actually someone who I'm not even really. I don't need the student debt canceled. Like I was still paying when we had the little furlough, and then everybody would convince me that it's gonna get canceled. Don't waste your money spent. So I was like, all right, you know what? I paid it. I paid down a good amount with the furlough when you're not paying interest on it. So I was like, I'll see what they're doing, and then of course they put it back. So I should have just listened to myself, but as I started paying back, it was really after I went to the boot camp, because the boot camp costs about $15,000, and I had to get a loan, like a private loan through the boot camp itself. But they had you start paying it back immediately, and it was like, I want to say it might have been like $900 a month. It was something high, maybe 500. I think it was something like $500 a month. So, but it was enough to like, okay, it's forcing me to kind of get something. That's what forced me to get something in the field, something that was going to be able to pay that bill and make sure that I was able to afford everything else I was doing. But I lost my train. What was I saying? The 500. Oh yeah, paying. So, but yeah, that's when I started realizing though the actual value of the education. Since I was paying for it, I was taking the work a lot more seriously. And I think what happens in college is we're not really paying that money up front. So the first couple of years we goofing off. We just like, oh, we free from our parents. We not so when we're actually in those spaces, we're not even looking at it like we're paying to be here. Like
That's right.
if I paid for school out of my pocket up front, completely different mindset going in there.
That's right.
I didn't even have enough money to know how much I was spending on college at the beginning. So, and I seen people, and that's why I seen a lot of people make mistakes. Like, they was getting their refund checks back and then blowing it on clothes or something like that. So I really feel like that was a big thing from my observations. Other black students at Georgia State, some of the issues that they ran into. Um, Money management is a huge, huge thing. Um, that's probably the biggest. I don't know. There's not really a class for that, but it needs to be intro freshman class for people learn how to budget instantly. But I mean, also that, but that's also something else. Like to me, college simulates the real life. So you don't. It's like a half step into the real world. So you have all the independence, the responsibilities, but you do have a couple of safeguards there, or some a little bit more structure maybe. So if you're staying on campus, then you might pay all the money up front or something. But I started staying on student housing that was or on campus housing that wasn't really part of the school, but I was paying monthly like an apartment. So that got me into the idea of paying, and I was paying a high amount of money for one little room that I'm sharing with four other people. So I it taught me early, and then that I don't need to be paying that for the space, or you can get a lot more for your dollar. And then the next place I lived, I was paying like one third of it. Had a townhouse with two of my friends at that time. So it's I know I always advocate for people to go to school now more than ever. Somebody had just contacted me on LinkedIn, was asking if he should do a boot camp or go to school. I was like, boot camp it'll get you a job quickly, but you might get laid off from that job, and then you're not gonna have the backup knowledge or the real experience
Foundation.
to get another position. So I had a friend who I went to the boot camp with, and then he had got laid off around the same time as me, but he was having a hard time because he didn't have his degree. He had just kind of did the boot camp. So, and he doesn't necessarily have enough experience to make up for the lack of a degree. So it's just, he's been searching for a while. I think he's on the he said he had an interview. I spoke with him like yesterday or 2 days ago. He said he had a interview pending with a startup, but he's been he's been actively looking for a while. I've just kind of started getting back into the application game and everything. So, but I've had some pretty decent success with the lack of time that I've been putting in. And a lot of them have said like, yeah, the fact that you have your degree is a real plus. So
You know, one of the things that would be important, and people go through different levels of trauma and frustration after a job loss, and I get that because I've been there. I've been in that position where a dramatic job closure. You have this meeting, and you invited to this meeting, and the mood in the room the mood in the room is ominous. Normally
Yeah,
when
they
we
like.
get together in the room, everybody's spoken, but you can tell that there's a different feel to the room. And
Uh-huh.
this person that you don't you see maybe once or twice a year is in the room, and this person's at the front of the room, and next thing you know, you find out that this place that you were coming to every morning will not be anymore in
Got
about
the tissue box for you and everything.
right. It's not going to be around much longer. So I get and I appreciate the fact that you mentioned that you're getting getting back into the flow of things, and I know a little bit about you, and I know that you had been a little more prepared for something like this time around. So
Uh-huh.
you weren't pressed like some people who might have been
Right.
living hand to mouth
Uh-huh.
and needed to jump right into something. And so there's a lot of lessons in you not being so pressed also. Um,
That's
there was a
budgeting.
yeah.
Budgeting.
His name, golly, his name just escaped me. The comedian who came up with Baby Kids. This is before your time, of
Uh-huh.
course. Um, he died before his time. I mean, if we had people in the chat, somebody would be able to tell me. I cannot believe his name just went out of my head. But he once told a joke that, you know, ninjas be sitting around thinking that they're gonna get a knock at the door, job. You know, so for some people, when we talk about consistency, yes, if you are laid off or something like that, we understand that it may take you some time to gather your confidence back. But then there's others like one of the things that is true about my background, and this is a plug when you were talking about the need for financial empowerment, what we used to call financial literacy. Well, of course, part of my background is as a financial coach, teaching people how to create spending plans and so forth. And by by the grace of Yahweh, I was one of the people that helped to get on the Rise Community Development, which is on the west side of Atlanta, off the ground, and it's still vibrant and functioning and providing that type of education. So I would encourage somebody watching this stream to go check them out for that type of support.
Uh-huh.
But I remember having a client a couple of years ago, and she was at her wits' end. She was working a couple of jobs and helping to raise a grandchild, and her her grown son was in the house, but wasn't providing any income.
Uh-huh.
And I said to her, I said, why? And she couldn't really give me a straight answer. And yes, she was struggling. She was at
Uh-huh.
her wits' end. And I said, well, you need to have a come to Jesus meeting with him after this session with me,
Uh-huh.
and let him know that you need help or things are going to change radically. And miraculously, talking about networks, she said that between the time of that meeting where I told her that and our next meeting, maybe about a month later, a friend called him about a job. And so, we also have that issue where some people who could be in the workforce or goofing off playing video games all day and getting low, and so consistency, you some people they look for a little while and they get frustrated and say F it, I'm just gonna, you know I'm gonna just do I'm just gonna take my therapy and that's it.
Uh-huh.
But you have to, when you don't have a gig, once you get your bearings, you have to treat getting a gig like a gig. That is your gig, getting the gig.
Right. Yeah, that's it right there. Because it's a full time job to find the
yeah,
job. It's a
yeah.
full time job to find one. And like that's what I was saying when I was working, and it come down to opportunity cost, because when I was working at the COVID test, I was like, yeah, I'm getting money, but I'm not getting the money that I need. So it's like I gotta sacrifice a couple of the income right now in order to set myself up later. And a lot of people don't, like, and that's something that is hard to do just in general, like, and especially when you're um like down to your last and you need some money in order to survive. Like, that's a hard decision to make, especially planning for the future. And I think that's where a lot of people are at, to where they're just barely surviving, so they don't have the time to set a week aside to interview for a position that can pay them the amount of money that they would need, so they don't have to struggle or have to work two jobs in order to make ends meet. So yeah, we need to, people do need to understand that the job search itself is a full-time job. Like, you need to be putting in 40 hours. If you're unemployed, you need to be putting in 40 hours to, you need, that's really my thing. You need to be doing 40 hours of some type of work. If you're not getting paid for it, then your efforts need to be going towards getting some money. 40 hours got to go towards getting some type of money,
That's
some
right.
type of income. And that's just the way America's set up. It's like you gotta you gotta make X amount of dollars, pay your bills, pay your taxes, all of that. So, what I mean, it's a system that I do feel, I won't say is rigged against us. I feel like it wasn't taught to us at all, and we're just kind of out here figuring it out, and not knowing is what's working against us. And I just feel like there's such an, I'll say, ignorance in our community, just because we've traditionally not been exposed to, for one, the positions that pay well. Like, just to I want to add this in here too. I'm in a it's an Atlanta program for to get UX, the more people in the UX design. So it's a free program where they take you and you get a Google certificate at the end of it. And then the classes meet every Monday, but it's a self-paced course, so we have modules to complete throughout the week. Um,
What is
they
a
had
UX design? What is that?
um, user experience, or user interaction.
Okay.
So, and that's even bigger than tech. Like, that's something that I really just made like a little Twitter thread about that today, because there's only, I think it said it was some crazy low number. I think I want to say 2 or 3% of the UX designers are black. Let me
Yeah.
see, 2 or 3, and it's a position that pays like $95,000 a year.
Hmm.
And there's so many different, like, there's research, there's content, there's visual. Hold on, let me actually find that tweet real quick. But it's just we don't know some, like, there's a UX copywriter, and that's the person who comes up with the content for a website, or like just the text. You're not coding or anything, but there's UX designers for physical products. So there's a UX designer for a phone, for a computer, chair that I'm sitting in. Like, UX is everywhere. And that's where we're being left out, because if there's nobody who's representing us in those UX meetings, then something that, the way black people use a phone might be slightly different, or what we use it for. So we're being underrepresented in those areas. I remember I was looking for yeah, it's 3.4% black, 70.2% white, 10.6% Hispanic, 10.4% Asian, 5% unknown, then 3.4. Only people we beating out is Alaskan Native Americans at
Wow.
point at 0.4%.
Wow. So as much as we deal with technology, we meaning black folks what you're saying is that there's a lot of opportunity in tech
So,
for Black
not
people.
even just tech. I'm saying because UX is they use that everywhere. There's fashion UX. There's uh, every company, every big company now has UX because it's all, especially when it comes to a website or an app, because they're all about the user, like the user's experience. Even a bit like a bank probably has a UX designer, how they're setting up when you're walking up to the teller, and or how um, the ATM is working. Like all of this is UX, and then um, we just have to expose people to more of these positions, because I mean these are, to me, those sound like cool positions that people would actually be interested in, want to engage in. Like it allows them to be a little bit creative. So that's what I'm trying to push now as I'm learning more about this technology, because there's like three sections. Let me see. I'm really about to read the tweets that I made earlier. It was
And one
three.
of the things, while you're looking for that, one of the things that's important about you sharing this is the fact that you are sharing this, because for some people their mentality is, well, I'm a get into this and ball like crazy, and then maybe I'll mention it. But I don't live from that standpoint. I live from
Mhm,
the standpoint of not scarcity, but unlimited wealth. So
mhm,
the amazing Paul Zane Pilzer, he said that we have unlimited wealth. So there's no need to try to restrict the next person from getting an opportunity as if that's the last opportunity on earth. And
mhm,
part of the reason why I'm as blessed as I am is because every chance I get, I'm trying to put somebody on.
mhm.
And then sometimes people get frustrated because they're looking for the put back on from the person they put on, but that's not how it necessarily works.
Yeah.
Once you extend the put on, your put on can come from anywhere. You
Right.
don't, because now you're operating from the wrong premise. You're not really releasing it. You're releasing it. You still got your hand on it. Like, okay, now I'm expecting an exchange here, but your exchange may not come from that person. You release it, and then trust heaven to give you what you want
Right.
in exchange. So that's a good thing, man. Yeah, keep that up.
Yeah. Hold on, I did find it. So, yeah, there's like four sections for it. So there's research, design, development, and content, and each one of those has different positions for that, like different sub positions for them that are active. They're saying like they're hiring 85% of the of the um of the jobs are saying that they're hiring UX designers. So it's a place I'll encourage everybody to look into. You don't need a degree in order to get into the field. Definitely do some courses, but I think it's one of those jobs that anybody can really do if you apply yourself the right way.
I'm going to
But
tell my son to look into that. I mean,
definitely do
yeah,
that.
shucks. Yeah.
Because yeah, it's not as technical. Like they do have the development one is maybe a little bit more technical. They have the front end developer is somewhat considered UX to a degree. Then they have like a technical designer, and there was one other one for the technical aspect. But yeah, yeah, man. So we're about at a hour and 5 minutes. Did you have anything else that you wanted to touch on? I know we got started late. It was a rocky start, but you know what I mean. I think we got a good amount of things talked
Yeah,
about.
yeah. So, in fact, this this was our launch point, and you know, this was important for those people who have been saying they've been wanting to do something like this forever.
Hmm.
And yeah, this first one's a little rough, but what we could have done is put it off.
Right.
And for some people, the reason why you aren't consistent is because you're not consistent in the thing that you say you want to do, because what you are consistent in is procrastination.
Mm, yeah.
You've always got a reason why not.
Hmm.
And you're now, of course, we're after excellence, and we'll be there.
Hmm.
However, for those perfectionists out there who've critiqued, you critique the fact that I move my screen around, and you critique the background, you critique my cap. I'm only wearing this cap because I'm wearing this in honor of my mentor, who's a huge Atlanta Falcons fan. He
Hmm.
has a lot of hope in Kirk Cousins doing something.
Okay.
Well, this is this is for
we, we do it. Hey man, Atlanta. I'm gonna let y'all. I'm gonna let Atlanta be Atlanta, man. I'll be here doing it. But
but you
hey,
say you gotta stay out of it.
I'm gonna throw my hands up, man. Shout out to the Falcons, man. I don't really even watch. I don't even watch NFL for real. So
And I thought you had the red headset on, because you want
it's
to
Atlanta. You know what I mean? I'm Atlanta for real, but you know what I mean. I went to the United game with
I heard that's a
my
blast.
family.
I
Yeah,
heard that's a
they
blast.
destroyed them. I'm like, yeah, that's. But it is really fun to watch. So I had a good time there. I'm
Yeah,
shouting out all the sports teams.
yeah. So thank you so much for jumpstarting this, and I think we're going to pick up where we left off, because we've got quite a bit more to say about consistency. I
Hmm.
feel like we sort of scratched the surface, but in the meantime, the direction we went should have helped give some people some tips who are new in the marketplace,
Hmm.
how to address mentorship. You put people up on UX. So from my vantage point, we've already given out some free game, you
Yeah,
know.
that's the point. I mean, yeah, we that and that's why we started this. We were always having good in depth conversations about different topics, various topics. So we just wanted to make sure that that information isn't just being shared amongst the two of us. So we wanted to invite more people to have these discussions. You know, when we get as we get further along, we're gonna have things more polished, maybe a thumbnails, the whole nine. Like you see, we got the little logo in the top of the screen right now. That'll be gone soon. We figured this out literally 5 minutes before we came on because anyone trying to do this in the future, make sure that you set things up probably a week before to make sure that you have all the proper equipment. It isn't difficult to stream if you're thinking about getting into it. We're doing it pretty naturally. We don't have any scripts. We barely talked about, well, you just told me we talking about consistency really. And so I was like, all right, that's enough for us to, have a good conversation on. We did that. So, you seeing us do it lets you know that if you had any thoughts about doing it, you can do it by yourself and just, we're talking to nobody right now, but we know in the future, this is a great place to see where we're starting from. Like, I think it's very raw, uncut, and I mean, we're trying to just be our authentic selves and hope that translates to the audience. And we're trying just to provide a good experience for everyone who's watching, who will look and watch in the future, and just kind of start a community here to where you can reach out to us and you know ask questions, and just continue. If you want to come hang out with us in Atlanta, we're we're around. So thank you everybody for watching.
All right. Good night, everybody. Blessings.
Good night, everyone. Thank you. Hold on. I don't even know if I ended it right. It says stop my camera. Okay. See, look, we still figuring out how to do. Okay, let me hover over this, see if that's gonna.
Yeah, we still
Okay.
live.
Okay, now it says end stream. Here we go. All right, bye everyone.
Good night.